And we are live. Hey everybody, welcome to the Sports Take Lunch Break, brought to you by Office Essentials, the premier provider for all your office needs. My name's Andrew Corns, and we're kicking off our first episode with an NHL preview extravaganza. Before we jump in, I'm going to quickly go around the room and introduce everybody. We've got Sean Jeffries.
Hello.
Stuart Hultgren.
Yep.
John Whitcutter.
Hello.
And Dan Suchanek.
Hey, everybody.
Okay, gentlemen, let's start off by answering some burning questions that the St. Louis Blues fans have been asking all summer as we've been kind of basking in the glory, definitely not the gloria, of the first Stanley Cup championship win for the St. Louis Blues. You know, to be totally honest with you, we had a script last week, and I completely changed it after the big news of Justin Falk coming in. Our original question was going to be, did Doug Armstrong make the right move by basically keeping the team as it was? The huge blockbuster last week, Justin Falk came in. We sent Joel Edmondson out. I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on the new dynamic of the team heading into the season.
Anytime you can add a guy like Justin Falk, and really, if we're honest, Eddie, as much as I love Crop Top Eddie, losing him is not going to be a big loss this season. And going forward from that, as long as we keep Pietrangelo, I can't see anything but this trade as a win. Even if, Bach does become that 20, 30 goal-scoring top six winger, if you can add a guy like Falk to the lineup for what we traded, just look at what happened last year. After last year Ryan O'Reilly trade, whatever Armstrong does, I'm drinking that Kool-Aid. So I'm excited about the trade for one.
Yeah, I would tend to agree as far as Doug Armstrong's got pretty much, carte blanche to do whatever he wants to do. He seems to be making all the right decisions. I think people are kind of focused on what's going to happen after this year with Pietrangelo and Shen and who's going to stay and who's going to go. And I think it's unwise to jump to conclusions just because they signed Falk to this deal, which I did initially. I'm like, wow, okay, Pietrangelo's gone, but I don't think that that's necessarily true, and there's no question it makes the team better and possibly the deepest defense, at least in the Western Conference, if not the entire league, really.
There's no doubt the right side of the defense is as strong as it can be with Petro, Parayko, Falk. Power play is certainly going to be improved, I would assume. Everyone kind of feels the same way about the power play improvements.
Yeah, I'm seeing him as a right-handed Dunn, but a little bit better. I like the Falk trade. Edmondson was a great player for us, but being able to put a right-handed stick in the lineup is going to help us a lot more this year.
We're jumping the gun, obviously, with the idea of the contract situation next summer, but do we see the Falk move as a precursor for Petro leaving? I know that's been a hot topic amongst the Twitterverse that we're not going to be able to afford Petro. He's going to ask for a Carlson kind of money, $11 million a year. What do you guys think about the dynamic of the team and the cap space coming into next year even?
The Petro has lived in St. Louis now. I think he might have just moved again last year, but he has that house over in Ladue. He has triplets now. He's lived in St. Louis for 8 years. St. Louis is just as much of his home as Toronto at this point. He could ask, and does Armstrong do that? He's going to be 30 years old next offseason, going into probably a lockout situation, an expansion draft. It's going to be kind of tough, but I think ultimately you got to lock down Petro. If you can make him a Jackman-type player who's a one-man or one-club man, I think you do it, but I'm biased. I said last year before the Blues won the Stanley Cup that if we win a Stanley Cup, we could suck for the next 6 or 7 years, and I'm happy with it. And my opinion's changed a little bit on that, but if it means retaining some of these legendary guys, I wouldn't mind if we slide just a little bit. But that's what I say now and not 2 years from now. So it can always change.
Yeah, Sean, do you feel kind of the same way on that?
Yeah, I think so. I think the expansion draft kind of brings up a really interesting wrinkle in the possibilities there. Is Falk's 7-year contract sort of set up to be the perfect thing for Seattle to take away from the Blues, and kind of ease that cap situation if you are able to sign Pietrangelo to a deal. Pietrangelo will be 30 this year, I think. Armstrong doesn't like to sign defensemen long-term contracts who are older than, say, 32, 33. So if you look at what some of the other free agent defensemen have been getting the last couple of seasons, and you look at Pietrangelo and think he's going to get $9 million for 8 or 9 years, it doesn't seem like a Doug Armstrong contract, really. But again, if you can work something out where, what if they leave Petro, unprotected? They already have Falk signed, and they sign Pietrangelo to a deal that maybe isn't super cap friendly for the team, and maybe they leave him unprotected, and that's how that fixes that situation. But I would rather see Pietrangelo stay, and I think they'll find a way to sign him.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that Armstrong doesn't like to sign defensemen who are over 30 to long-term contracts, but he also hasn't had the opportunity of a caliber of a type player like Pietrangelo. I mean, he's a top 15, top 20 defenseman, I think, easily in the league at this point. And his game is probably going to age pretty well. So at 38, he'll have less wear on his body than a Shea Weber or even a Drew Doughty. So I would feel more comfortable with that as him locked up till 38 than an Edmondson or Bortuzzo or Bruiser type, even a Jackman type, whose knees might give out at any time or back might fail. So,
and realistically, how many teams out there in the upper echelon can afford Petro with their cap situation? I mean, for me, I always thought if he's going to leave St. Louis, he's probably going to go to Toronto. It's his birth location, and so Toronto made sense. They certainly can't afford him with Matthews and Riley and the amount of contracts that they have. So for me, it's, does Petro go somewhere that he knows the team isn't as good so he can get $11 million, or does he stay somewhere, get a nice paycheck, probably in the 9.5 range, and be on a contender year after year? So I see him staying here personally.
But really, what color pajamas was he wearing as a kid? That's what we really need to know now.
We need the photographic evidence on that. Okay, enough about Falk and Petro. Let's jump into one of the departures from the Blues this summer. Pat Maroon, everybody's local hero, scored the most famous goal in St. Louis Blues history, has moved on to Tampa Bay over the summer. He's 31 years old. He ultimately only had 28 points last year, 10 goals and 18 assists. So the question is, does he have an effect on or off the ice as he departs St. Louis in our locker room, and what effect does he maybe have on Tampa Bay?
I think the biggest thing that's missed is just from a fan perspective, obviously, being a local guy. The fans loved having him here. I loved having him here because of that, and of course the playoff heroics. But I don't think that they'll miss him on the ice during the regular season. And by the time that they get to the playoffs this season, he'll be a non-factor as far as looking at the lineup is concerned for the Blues anyway. I think he could potentially be really important for the Lightning. We saw him fighting in preseason and showing off a little bit, but maybe just kind of giving the Lightning fans a little taste of, hey, here's what I bring, and you guys haven't had this before, at least not in the last season or so, and that could be really good for them.
Yeah, I see him, anywhere in the lineup. You can slot him first line, fourth line, wherever you need him. You need him on the power play. I wouldn't really put him on the penalty kill. But anywhere else you can put him, and he's a nice body to have out there. Which saying that though, we have the tools to replace him. So Nolan is still down there, and McEachern. They can easily fill in. Maybe not as many as as gruff as he was, or as poignant he is with words. But yeah, we will. It's going to be a good year for both of them. It's good years for the Blues. And good year for Tampa Bay that he's going to move there.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think a lot of us realized Maroon's days were limited. He's a legend here, of course. I would personally have liked to see him make more money just for his sake. So to see him sign for less, I thought it would have been nice. So I I like Pat. I like the Maroons.
It certainly felt like he was going to get more in the summer based on
Yeah.
every projection that was out there, and then it was kind of shocking when you saw what he signed for.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that has to do with the lockout coming up and the expansion draft type stuff. And also, everyone has to know that he has a lot of miles on his body, and he plays that bruising style that, I mean, no one wants him to be Troy Brower. And hopefully teams have learned from that. But usually you expect there's at least one GM out there who's going to just kind of go crazy and throw some Vegas-style money at someone. So,
and from Tampa's perspective, they have to sort of look at him as like the ideal glue piece, especially based off what he did with St. Louis last year. If you put Pat Maroon in that team last year against Columbus, maybe he's the difference that gives them that toughness and that fortitude that they were really missing, which, Kucherov kind of stepped up and tried to do, ultimately hindering the team with the suspension that he got. But, there's a good chance Pat Maroon's the key component to that team to complete the puzzle.
Could be,
yeah, and I think Hedman also staying healthy is a big part of it because Hedman was out for that series. And he's such a dominant defenseman that it's just amazing how that team changes once he's off the ice. But Hedman reminded me of the rumors are going around again of Drouin being traded from the Canadiens. I guess he's on the block, and that's one of those hindsight trades that is just so interesting of trading Drouin for Sergachev, John? Sergachev, maybe. But in retrospect, one of those trades. And I remember being upset when Shattenkirk turned down a trade to Tampa, and we were going to get Drouin. But in hindsight, I guess it worked out for us. But that's wild, just making that connection also. If we came so close to him, Drouin being on the Blues, and how that would have changed, that one trade would have changed everything probably.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think the last question that St. Louis Blues fans specifically have on their mind over the summer is Jordan Binnington finally got his new contract, 2 years, $8.8 million, so 4.4 annual. He's sort of been anointed the savior of the Blues in net. The big question is, can he possibly live up to the hype and the numbers that he put up last year? He finished the regular season at 24-5-1, had a goals against under 2. His save percentage was right around 93%. We did see that drop a little bit in the postseason. Some cracks started to show through. Everyone's had the summer to kind of scout him, look at video. Do we see Jordan Binnington evolving his game and maybe putting up a Vezina quality year, or does he kind of regress back to the middle ground?
Well, we have to see him play, almost twice as many games as he played last year. I'm in the camp of I'm completely not convinced yet. You cannot take away what he did in the playoffs. The 16 wins by a rookie, the Stanley Cup, obviously, played out of his mind for half a season. But until we can see him repeat that, I'm not ready to say he's the ultimate answer. We're show me state kind of deal. Let me see it, and I'll believe it. But I know I heard just this morning on the radio someone talking about how he's loving it. He's loving the doubt. He's all about people not believing that he's the guy yet. So, hey, great. Show me.
Fuel to the fire, right?
Yeah, he seems to be a guy that's fueled by a chip on his shoulder. But goalies are head cases. There's no sane goalie out there. You have to be insane to sit in net and have people rip a hard piece of plastic at you, rubber at you, not plastic, thankfully. Rubber at you at 100 miles an hour. You're not quite right in the mind. And I think Binnington fits that. And I do expect a regression. He'll get figured out a little bit. I don't think he's a 930 save percentage guy as a career thing. But even if he's league average, I'll take it. He's solid. I think Allen's solid. It's a good 1A, 1B situation for the Blues to be in. And honestly, hopefully in the playoffs this year, we don't need a guy who stands on his head to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. Ultimately, if we fire on all cylinders, he will only need to be average.
Yeah, using them in tandem is what's going to be the key this year. He's not the de facto number one. We're paying him as little bit like that, but I think using him in a tandem with Allen to be able to eat up 60% of the games while Allen gets that other 40%, I think it's going to help both of them compete, because they both want to compete, and if they have that competition within each other, that friendly competition, it's going to help them both out. So I don't really like the money we paid him, but he did win us a cup, so I will let Armstrong make those decisions. I mean, it's the reason why I'm sitting where I am and he's sitting where he is.
Yeah, and every time you look and kind of complain about, and I think he's overpaid a bit too, just think about that anxiety of watching Game 7, that first period, as Boston just shelled him, and somehow he just kept the puck out of the net. I mean, honestly, that alone, the city of St. Louis should be giving him $5 million out of their own pocket for that Game 7 performance. I mean, he was just phenomenal, and
he's had big moments in the preseason too. He's made a couple of huge saves, especially in that Hockeyville game against the Red Wings. Yeah. Everyone was praising him.
Eye-popping.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look around the league, really, how many teams are there? A handful, 3 maybe, who have like a super number 1 A+ guy in the net instead of having 2, A, B level guys. There's so many teams now that do that.
Even Tampa Bay, who has Vasilevsky, who's almost unanimously the best goalie in the league, still gave their backup more than 20 games last year. So
yeah,
it's just so unheard of. You're never going to see a Grant Fuhr situation again. I think it's safe to say that Allen probably gets about 35-40% of the starts this year. It's a healthy competition between the two. I think Armstrong was really smart to make sure they're both on a deal that expires at the same time, so it keeps them both hungry. If Binnington ultimately becomes the guy, you then get Allen's contract off the books, you can increase his pay, and you're in a perfect situation. If he ends up struggling, you're not too committed to it. So I really think Armstrong hit a home run personally for the contract and the situation. There's nothing wrong with it for me.
I agree.
And now we'll quickly jump into our predictions for the year. So we want to make sure we have documented proof of what we're saying, so we can either look like geniuses or we can ridicule each other as the season goes on.
I just want to interject. Stuart made a good point about goalies. Some of you guys were goalies in the past, right? You've played goal, maybe a little.
John plays defense, I believe, right defense?
I played left.
Left, okay.
I played a little bit of goaltending back in the day, but this was quite a long time ago, and it was quite apparent that, 1, it was expensive, and 2, I wasn't Felix the Cat in that.
But did you take a few pucks to the face?
I think everyone has taken a puck to the face. Unfortunately, I didn't have a helmet on the most recent time I took it off the face, which that hurts quite a bit.
I still have my Curtis Joseph replica mask with a dent right in the middle of the nose from a puck, and I think that was the end of my goalkeeping career. So.
This is Emily from Office Essentials. Did you know that germs on hands can be transferred up to 7 times, making frequently touched surfaces in the office hotspots for viruses? And a virus can spread through an entire office in just a few hours. Some germs can even live for days on hard surfaces. So hotspots like door handles, keyboards, light switches, desktops, and even elevator buttons should be cleaned even more often. And don't forget about the kitchen. Break rooms have some of the germiest surfaces in the entire office. Sink faucets, microwaves, and refrigerator handles too. Office Essentials can help you protect your office from sickness this flu season. Right now at stlofficesupplies.com, we're offering a free printable poster that you can print and hang around your office. It contains tips to help coworkers prevent the spread of the flu. Office Essentials is your hometown supplier of all the office supplies and furniture you need to run and grow your business. Learn more today at stlofficesupplies.com.
As we get into predictions, we're going to quickly go around the table and find out. The first one is, where will the Blues finish in the Central Division? Sean, I'm curious, where do you see them sliding in?
I was forced to pick a number, so I picked 3rd. I honestly, there's so much parity. I think it could be, they could finish 1st, they could finish 4th, but I would say 3rd. I'm pretty comfortable with that. 3rd.
Yeah, I'm gonna I'm going to go with second. That's what I said before the Falk trade, and I think I'm going to stick with that. The Central is just so strong. The Thunderdome, who knows what teams are going to come out of it on top. Blues could win the division, run away, or they could, finish 4th, 5th, or who knows. That's why we have the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna echo pretty much what both of them said. The Central Division is tough. I think it's the best division in the league at this point. And then going into this season, everyone's looking at Dallas possibly to be that team that really takes off. I really don't see any reason why they can't. They have pretty much everything they need at this point. I think everyone thinks that Winnipeg's probably at this point going to be in the basement based on the fact that they've lost some guys and they had a holdout. I believe he did just sign, so that'll help.
Yeah, Connor officially signed, and so did Laine.
Okay, so they're in. You got to imagine that's going to take them a little bit to get going. I'm sure they've been doing whatever they need to do in the offseason, but it hasn't been quite to that level. I expect them to get off to a slow start, and I don't know if they're ever going to get those, pun intended, jets moving. Chicago is Chicago. You never know what they're going to do. They've got the talent there, so they're just always going to hang around. Even though us as Blues fans love to see them fail, they're always there. Nashville's decent. I'm not scared of Minnesota, so I'm going to go with what both of them said, third or second. If I have to pick, I'm going to pick the Blues to be third. I think they're going to have a little bit of a slump coming out of the gate. They're going to have that hangover. I think they're going to get it together, and hopefully they'll make a run.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3 doesn't really matter in our division. All three teams are going to be great teams. I definitely have Dallas winning it this year with Colorado, and then St. Louis slided as third. But that could easily just jumble anywhere and fall as you like. But I think the Blues could be as top as 1 or as far as 5. But I like them at 2 or 3.
I've got Dallas winning the division personally. I think the addition of Joe Pavelski and the kind of under-the-radar addition that they've added, Corey Perry, that's a really low-risk, high-reward. If he has any kind of production this year as, maybe your third center or however they decide to use him, he's going to do really well. I expect Ben Bishop to have a big year. I've got St. Louis finishing second. I had them third behind Colorado before the Falk trade. I'm not sold on Colorado's goaltending. I think losing Varlamov definitely hurts them. There's so much firepower with Colorado, so I think they're still going to do really well. But I think the Blues will just get past them and get that home ice advantage in that first-round playoff series with them. So I've got St. Louis finishing second in the division. Then the next question will be, where do we see the Blues going in the postseason? Are they going to make another run to the Cup, or are they going to be the Blues of old and kind of go out early, Sean?
I've got them winning. I think it's the first, possibly only repeat since Pittsburgh, and the last one we'll see in the salary cap era.
Oh, so you got a prediction on how the labor dispute's going to end there. You heard it here first. I saw this morning that the Vegas betting odds came out for next season, and the Blues were giving the second lowest, I believe, odds of repeating since 2005 of any of the other teams, or since 88, actually.
Yeah, 4.5%.
87? Yeah, 4.5%, which honestly is probably right. Maybe, maybe not. But in the end, I think the Blues have the chops to make it happen. I mean, we have low turnover. The pieces are there. Really, outside of 2018 was just our bugaboo year that got us, because in the second half of 2017-2018 we were awful. And then the first half of 2018-19 were awful. I think the Blues go back to their normal ways. I'm not as optimistic as Sean. I think they go out in the second round, but I think they do have probably a bit better odds than 4.5%. I don't think they're quite getting the respect that they deserve there.
St. Louis fans love that too. We love to feel like we're downtrodden and that no one gives us the respect we deserve, but maybe they don't.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to. One, I love the optimism from Sean here. I mean, I think everyone listening is glad to hear that they're going to win again. I'm not surprised to see what Vegas has said. I mean, up until last year, no one ever expected us to ever win. I mean, we were the Cubs of the NHL. I'm with Stuart here. I don't think they're going to repeat. I hope they do. I think everyone does. I agree. I think it's going to be business as usual as the Blues. I think they're going to make the playoffs. I don't think it's going to be a struggle to make the playoffs, and I think we all agree they're going to make the playoffs. I don't think anyone has any doubt there. They should. I'm going to say probably a second round loss. It just all the parity in the league is just amazing. I mean, it's just tough, period. And everyone's already discussed how the way it's set up, it's just really hard for a team to repeat. We have all the pieces still. Like you said, nothing's really been broken. If anything, you could say we might have gotten better. It's really going to come down to the goaltending, as we've discussed. But, yeah, I'm going to say second-round loss, and it's just going to be the pieces aren't going to quite fit this time. The matchups are going to be tough. I don't expect us to just lay over and flop. I think we might have finally gotten that out of our system. I think the Blues have finally hit that next level. All those players know what it takes now. So I don't think you're going to see them roll over. It's going to be a tough-fought battle with whoever we play, but it'll probably be a Game 6, Game 7 loss.
Yeah, I'm not too optimistic with them this year. I wish I was better. I wish I was. But I truly think that they're going to go out first round, maybe seventh game. If they do get past the first round, it's probably going to be a quick 5-gamer in that second round. Once again, I wish I could think that the Blues are going to go all the way, but at this time, I can't really see that.
John, I think you've got a really good point that now that we've got the cup in the bag, the whole culture has changed where there's this perception that the Blues would consistently choke in the playoffs, and it felt like we got through that when we beat the Blackhawks a few years ago and made the run to the conference finals. It didn't come to fruition, and then now we finally got the monkey off the back. So I agree that I think the new Blues are going to be a much tougher animal when the playoffs come. But because our division is so compact, 1 through 6 really, it's hard for me to see us going on another deep run. It's such a grind. I think we're going to get Colorado in round 1. They're going to present a lot of problems. I think we get through them. Then I've got us matching up with Dallas in the second round. We all know how last year went. Break here or break there. The big goal, obviously, by Maroon. That series could have flipped with a change or a bounce here or there. So I think Dallas has the magic this year with Pavelski and Perry being added to the lineup. So I think we're going to go out to Dallas in the second round. But I don't think it's going to be a failure for the Blues. We've banked one. I think we could all kind of share Stuart's sentiments that if they struggled for 5 or 6 years, it wouldn't stress any of us out, really. I mean, we can kind of rest on our laurels for a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, we look at our shrine to this Stanley Cup Finals. I know John has one. I'm sure we'll all have one by the end. And we can just kind of cry tears in front of that of happiness every time we need to see something cheer us up.
As long as it's not Chicago taking us out of the playoffs, I think we're all okay, right?
As long as Chicago doesn't win the Stanley Cup ever for the rest of human history, I will be happy.
Again, I like the optimism there from Stuart. I would agree. I don't want them to win. I think as long as they put forth an effort, and it just doesn't look like they've regressed. Mm-hmm. I think to see them roll over I would get upset. This team has proven now that they can battle adversity, and I would say last year they were pretty lucky with their injuries. But in the past, we've had every injury known to man. I mean, I don't know how many years ago it was now. We had like the most goalies that played in a season ever. God forbid that were to happen. I wouldn't expect it to, but I just want this team to be competitive, and I want them to force the team to beat them. As long as they don't beat themselves, I won't be upset.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
And I've said this before to Andrew. Every time I turn the game on, I expect them to win. I expect to see the Blues win. That's kind of why I pick them to go all the way. But I think winning the Stanley Cup finally, and just as each season goes on, it becomes easier and easier to be more realistic. And so when they don't win that game that I expect them to win, it's not going to trigger me into the spiral of despair or anything like that. It's easier to take the games and enjoy them more, regardless of the outcome, especially now that they've won
for sure
the big trophy.
Yeah. The next question is a little more ambiguous. You could probably take this in a couple of different ways. The question is, who's the dark horse this year to make a Blues-esque run, if you will? It could be a dark horse that just makes the playoffs unexpectedly, or maybe makes a deep run all the way through the playoffs. Do you have a team that you've kind of got your eye on that maybe not enough people are giving credit?
I'm picking the New Jersey Devils. Adding players like PK Subban and getting Jack Hughes in the draft, to adding that to already having Nico Hischier from last year. I know they've added at least another.
They've got Wayne Simmons this year as well.
Wayne Simmons, the other free agent addition. They didn't make the playoffs last year. I think for sure they'll make the playoffs, and I think they could go really deep if they can get goaltending. Corey Schneider, I think Kincaid is their backup, and they struggled last season, which, left them out of the playoffs. But I think if Corey Schneider can, be decent, they can tandem that goaltending situation. I think they could make a big run.
Yeah, I think the Devils will definitely be very entertaining this year. I don't watch a ton of the Eastern Conference, to be honest, so I probably won't see too much of them. But for me, my dark horse is going to be the Avalanche. I think a dark horse will come out of the Central regardless. It's just, again, so deep, so mysterious, like a wonderful avalanche. I don't know what that means. Anyways, Colorado Avalanche are... I think that was supposed to be an analogy or whatever. Anyways, the Avalanche are loaded with a lot of talent. They could be a Western Conference Tampa, possibly. But anyone with McKinnon, he's just so damn good. I think they will be able to knock a lot of teams out.
What do you think about their goaltending, though?
Goaltending in the NHL, all these guys are so good. Sean talked about Corey Schneider. I mean, Schneider has gone from a fantastic goalie to struggling for, I think, 3 straight seasons now. So if he gets back to it, who knows? Everything's just such a crapshoot at this level. It seems like goalies, they're all so talented, but they're also head cases. No one would have predicted that Binnington would have done what he did last year. Honestly, I think most of us would have expected Binnington would have been out of the organization by the end of last year, rather than leading us to a Stanley Cup and being our number 1 goalie. So, Colorado's my dark horse, but I don't think I'm entirely confident as far as them being the dark horse.
Yeah, I think both of them have brought up good teams so far, and I think they've both spoken pretty well about, why they picked them. I will say that I'm not really sure what that joke was. That
I was going to say mysterious like a beautiful woman, but I don't know if this is a family-friendly.
What I heard was basically, so I don't know what to tell you. That's just wrong. Anyway, so my team is Carolina. This isn't the dark horse that's going to win the whole thing. And you could even say I've kind of copped out here and took the easy route because they kind of made that run last year. But I don't think anyone is projecting them to be the team. I think they're going to surprise people again. And you look at their lineup, and I do this every year, and kind of like what you spoke to is, I don't watch a lot of Eastern Conference games, but they're just there. They were just there last year, and they made it with the team they had. I mean, the bunch of jerks. They did it. Don Cherry hates it, so I love it. They're fun to watch. You love or hate the Storm Surge at the end of the game. We could probably debate that for an hour.
It's kind of cool seeing Rod Brindamore behind the bench, too. I'm a big fan of his.
Right. I want to see them do well because I've always been the underdog kind of guy. And you know what? The Blues were the underdog for so long. I'm okay with Carolina doing it. I think Aho is very underrated. I kind of go back to my days with Tavares on the Islanders. I just don't know if he had the cast that really made him shine. It's yet to be seen how well he's going to do with Toronto, but I think there's deeper issues in Toronto. But yeah, I think that team's going to surprise some people, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them make the playoffs and not even just go 1 round. I could see them going 2. So I'm going to take Carolina.
Yeah, I have to agree with Sean with New Jersey. I think New Jersey it just has made just changes that they needed to do. I like their trades. I like Jack Hughes. I mean, how can you not like this kid? He's he's gonna be a top performer for them right away. I see. The only other team that I would say that might be another one would be Arizona. just because, a lot of people just don't even remember they're a team in the league anymore. So I think with picking up Kessel, he's gonna put some in the net for them, and they're gonna sneak into the playoffs, but they're not gonna be that huge dark horse like the Blues were last year. But I like Arizona, and I like New Jersey.
I'm going to kind of sound like I'm on the bandwagon for New Jersey, but I'm definitely on the bandwagon for New Jersey. I'm going to enjoy watching them every time they're playing. I can't guarantee that they're not going to just completely fall apart and the wheels will come off and they're going to be a giant train wreck, but I'm definitely looking forward to watching it one way or the other. PK Subban edition, Wayne Simmons, Jack Hughes, the number 1 pick. I think the real reason I've got them as my dark horse is just by default because of their division. The Islanders lost Lehner. I know they got Varlamov, but I think that's a little bit of a decrease. Columbus is completely ripped to shreds. The Flyers aren't any good. I don't trust the Rangers this year. I think they're still a year or two away. So almost by default, I think the Devils probably slide into like 3rd in the division, make the playoffs. You never know what can happen when the playoffs come. If they get on a run and Corey Schneider stands on his head, they could maybe knock off a Tampa or somebody that's kind of coming in on a cushy run. So I think the Devils could be a real wild card when the playoffs come, no pun intended. So.
Totally agree.
Now the next question is kind of on the flip side to that. So instead of a dark horse, who's kind of a team you see maybe being this year's Tampa Bay Lightning? That could either mean that they're coming in hot in the playoffs and they get bumped out early, or maybe it's a team that everyone picks to make the playoffs and they just can't even get it together from day one. Is there a crash and burn team that you see?
San Jose Sharks, who I love to hate, and even if there's fans in the room, I'll say it all day long. But
I don't know what you mean by that, Sean. Could you elaborate, please?
Well, John, the Sharks, everybody that I've read is picking them out of the West. A lot of the pundits are picking them out of the West, and they've got Pavelski added, which obviously is a big pickup for them, and obviously Burns and the guy who's hurt all the time, the other defenseman, Carlson, and of course you got to win it for
Jumbo Joe.
So yeah, I think that everybody will expect them to go all the way, and I will enjoy watching them lose in the first round.
I'll go ahead and jump in before Stuart here because I feel like I have to defend myself and my love for my second favorite team, the San Jose Sharks. Anyone who picks the Sharks to win, I think, is a little messed up in the head. I mean, they're basically the Blues. They've been that team that's been around for so long that always just seems to make the playoffs, but they can never take it to the next level. Jumbo Joe is my favorite current NHL player. He has been. I think he is probably the best passer of our actual generation, of the gentlemen that are sitting here anyways. His days are numbered. He is slow as molasses these days. His body is just giving up on him. I mean, it's the NHL. It's going to a faster game, and he's just not quick. I like the fact that the team was playing for him last year, but I honestly think that was their push for him. I don't even see them honestly making the playoffs. I that might be a little bit of a surprise to some people, but I could totally see them not making it. If they do, I don't see them up high. I'll go ahead and now speak to my crash and burn team. And it's funny that you didn't say this, Sean, because I know that you kind of talked about it the last time we spoke was Tampa Bay. You said Tampa Bay is just going to do it again. So I won't steal that from you, but I think that's an honorable mention. I'm going to pick Toronto. Toronto has all the pieces on paper that you would think that they would need. They got the coach that's apparently the best coach ever, which I will disagree with forever. And they've got all this young talent of kids. But I think that might be their downfall. I just don't. It's kind of like the Blues. We talked about how they have all those guys and how to know what it takes. Some of these guys seem like they're kind of their solo artists. They want to play for themselves. I mean, Matthews has all the skill in the world. I don't think anyone can question that. In the news lately, we've seen a little bit about some of his antics off the ice. We won't get into that right now. I just don't think they're quite ready yet, and I could totally see them crashing and burning. I think when the adversity starts hitting, they're not going to be able to overcome it. And I'm okay with that. I kind of like to see, as an American, those Canadian teams not do so well. I don't think Toronto's the worst when it comes to that. I think Vancouver proved to us that they can't handle a loss real well. but I actually know quite a few Canadians. They're very cocky, which they probably should be. They invented the sport. But I love to see us beat them. So I'll love to see Toronto burn this year.
Well, you say Toronto or Vancouver was the worst when they lost, but we haven't seen Toronto in the Stanley Cup Finals, and I think Toronto would burn if they got to Game 7 and lost to, say, the Bruins.
Look at how
the Bruins, obviously, but to
look at how they turned up for the Raptors celebration. Imagine the flip side of that.
Yeah, it would be pretty. I don't know if it would be Vancouver bad, but if they lost to, I don't know who would be the closest to one of their rivals on the Western Conference, but say if they lost to the Blackhawks, which is, I don't even want to think about that actually. So now on to the crash and burn team. Oh God. I had the Jets because they lost Trouba this offseason and they lost Big Buff. I don't think he's come back. I think he's still waffling between retirement or playing this year. It seems like he's kind of lost his love for the game right now. And they were really underperforming without Big Buff. But they did sign Connor and they did sign Line this week. So I think those two are talented enough, along with Little and their other players, that they will definitely be a playoff team. So I don't think they're going to crash and burn necessarily. So I'm not entirely sure who I have, but I think that Toronto definitely has the weak mentality, and I think Babcock is highly overrated. But anytime you're under that kind of pressure that you get in Toronto from the media and the fans, if you're not perfect, you're a complete failure. And that really works against them. I think you see that in European soccer, not to detour hard, but and across all sports, that they just demand perfection. And Blues fans were pretty lucky, and the team's pretty lucky that we have a very friendly media. In Toronto, they don't. So yeah, if Toronto lost, I wouldn't necessarily be super happy because I kind of like some of their fans, but I don't ever see them winning a Stanley Cup at this rate.
Yeah. Ultimate goal being the cup notwithstanding, it's abject failure every season if you're in Toronto and you're a fan of the Leafs if you don't win the Stanley Cup every year, no matter what. So, yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah, definitely I see all these teams able to crash and burn here. It's quite a big parity in the league, so you really it's really hard to determine at this time who is going to be, so good that they would crash and burn. But I'm gonna go from my heart on this one, and I'm gonna go with the Boston Bruins because Boston, you suck. No other way around it. I just don't want you anywhere near the playoffs anymore. My team was Tampa Bay, but once again I'm gonna go with my heart here and say that Boston, you can go and never come back.
I heard applause in my head when you said that.
From Barstool if they somehow managed to get a hold of that audio.
Oh man, I would also be happy if a Boston sports team never finished better than last ever again in any of their sports.
There is some playoff structure set up. You almost always are going to see Boston and Toronto in the first round, so at least they can, take one of them can take the other out almost every year, which is kind of a nice little thing. I'm going to share the sentiments of my colleague Sean. The Sharks should have been the crash and burn team last year. They actually had a couple of moments, some refereeing decisions that went their way.
They were handed some things.
They might have been handed a couple of things. I don't think the Sharks are particularly great when it comes to postseason. Their division's not good. Arizona, Vancouver, LA. I don't see any of those teams making huge improvements. So I think just because of the fact that they're going to play those teams so often, they're going to accrue a lot of points. I think Calgary's going to regress a little bit. So again, I think San Jose is probably going to win that division in all likelihood. However, once the playoffs come, there's no Pavelski. The goaltending isn't as strong as it could be. Karlsson's health always gets in question once the playoffs come and the game gets more physical. He's not really built to kind of handle that large physical playoff hockey. Brent Burns kind of became anemic as the postseason went on last year. He kind of disappeared in large stretches. So I don't think the Sharks can make it through round one. I actually have them matching up with the Blackhawks in round one, and the Blackhawks maybe kind of catching them off guard. So that's my pick, the Sharks. And now we'll go into our last prediction, which will be we're each going to run through our Stanley Cup Finals matchup and then ultimately our Stanley Cup champion. So, Sean, who do you see next year in the finals and winning it all?
I have the Blues out of the West, and I have the Pittsburgh Penguins coming out of the East. Probably be a 7-game battle, but I would have the Blues winning that series.
I have actually Tampa. I think they're just loaded with talent, and eventually a team has to do well with that much talent. I mean, otherwise they'll be like the Sabres and the Senators were in the mid-2000s. So, I mean, maybe. But I think it'll be Tampa in the East, with Maroon bringing that missing piece of whatever he brings. And Colorado / whatever team comes out of that Central alive and unbloodied will represent the Western Conference. And as far as winner, I think it'll be Tampa. I'd like to see Maroon lift the cup again, and good for him, cement himself as kind of a legend in his own right. But if it's not the Blues, as long as it's not the Blackhawks, I can survive with whoever wins. Doesn't matter as much to me, to be honest.
I'm going to go ahead and destroy Stuart's hopes and dreams here because I just don't think that that's going to happen for Maroon or Tampa. I've got Dallas out of the West. I think on paper they just look really tough. And I think even just not even having the paper, we saw it last year. I would say that they probably gave us our toughest run out of any team. And I think they've just gotten better. Obviously, it's been stated by Sean and everyone else here that I'm a San Jose fan. I've watched Pavelski a long time. He just has it. I don't know what you want to call it, but he just has it. He shows up, he plays, he tips pucks, he scores. I mean, he plays the game the right way, and I think he's going to do nothing but help that team. Their power play is going to be really good, I think. So I got Dallas out of the West. And then in the East, not to take away from what Stuart said, Tampa Bay is good. This is everything I pretty much just said about Dallas you can say about Tampa Bay. They're not going to crash and burn and I don't think they're going to crash and burn in that first round. And I think absolutely they're going to make the playoffs. But I'm going to take that old Pittsburgh Penguin team to show up and just do what they do, and they've been doing now for quite some time. They've got the talent on their team. They've got the will. They got players that have won it. Malkin is a stud. I think he still wants it. I think he wants another one. I don't think he wants to always be in the shadow of Crosby, and I think that this might be the year, barring health, that it becomes the Malkin show in Pittsburgh. He is built for playoff hockey, and I think as long as he stays healthy, that he's gonna do some work this year. So I've got Dallas and Pittsburgh. I think that's going to be a fun series to watch, and I got Dallas taking it, and I would bet that it's 6 or 7 games. I don't think it's going to be a sweep or anything like that. I think it's going to be a tough battle and good hockey, and we'll say Dallas in 7.
Well, I'm looking at New Jersey coming out of the East. I just like, once again, I like their transactions, their pickups, everything about them. I definitely think their goaltending is their question mark, but goaltending was our question mark, and they're probably going to have somebody in their system, or they can find somebody in their system that could step up and take the spot if they need to. And out of the Western Conference, I'm going with the Colorado Avalanche. Once again, they looked good last year. They just needed another step or two, and I think this year they have it. So I've got New Jersey over the Avs, which could easily flip flop.
I swear John and I did not discuss before we ever came in here, but I actually have the same finals matchup. So out of the West, I have Dallas. We've kind of waxed lyrically about Joe Pavelski throughout this. I think he brings another dimension to that team. They came so close to beating the Blues last year. You could make a case that they maybe gave the Blues the toughest run last year. So I think they've got enough juice, and adding Corey Perry, adding Joe Pavelski, I really like what Dallas has. Miro Heiskanen's going to get better. Klingberg's going to get better. They're just kind of poised this year to make a deep run. So I see Dallas out of the West. And in the East, before John said something, we went through 45 minutes of nobody mentioning the Pittsburgh Penguins, which is really kind of a shock to me that the Penguins have flown so under the radar given Malkin and Crosby. They've got the Kessel situation behind them now that they've shipped him to Arizona. I think that Malkin has a Conn Smythe type of postseason in him. The shackles are off. He's, like John said, I think this is going to be the year that Malkin shines. Crosby's going to get a lot of the focus, but I think Malkin's going to do a lot of the damage. Matt Murray's already won a couple of cups, so we know Matt Murray can go on a postseason run if he needs to. I think Pittsburgh and Dallas will be a crazy series, maybe going 6 or 7. And I've got the Pittsburgh Penguins lifting the cup at the end of the year. That would then give Sidney Crosby 4 cups as a captain. It would put him in kind of rarefied air. You're really only talking about Wayne Gretzky is the most recent to do it, Denny Potvin, Jean Beliveau. There's only a handful of names that have won 4 cups as a captain, so it would kind of cement Crosby as that generational player that, you know, we all kind of look back on. So I've got Pittsburgh winning it all.
Yeah, not a bad pick at all. Malkin's got a huge chip on his shoulder after kind of a down offensive year last year, which hurt him defensively too. And by all accounts, he's super motivated to come back and prove to everybody that he still is that sort of Conn Smythe type guy. And I think that's a good pick.
I think even too, maybe it's just me, but I think Russians are competitive. When you see them on the rink, they just seem like they feed off of each other. We've seen that with Ovechkin. I wouldn't be surprised that, they saw Tarasenko lift it. He's seen Ovechkin now lift it. 2 years in a row, there's been a fellow Russian lifting the cup. I think Malkin wants to be the third.
Don Cherry is hearing you somewhere out there, and he's crying right now. Those good Ontario boys are just not cutting it anymore, apparently.
Well, we want to thank you all for listening to our podcast for the first episode here. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll be back in a couple weeks with our next episode. So thanks for tuning in. Episodes. So thanks for tuning in. Episodes. So thanks for tuning in. Episodes. So thanks for tuning in.